Hi, I'm Alec Dudson from Intern, which is a platform empowering the next generation of creatives to build their dream career. And I've been asked by a new agency to talk to you today about whether or not you should hire someone if you can't pay them. And I suppose those of you who know me probably know what my answer is going to be to this. But over the next 10 minutes or so, we're just going to kind of get into it and kind of explore my reasoning why. So, if you can't pay me, should you hire me? No, absolutely not, in my opinion. I'm going to kind of break this down into different parts of the argument. I guess initially, I suppose the first thing to talk about is the moral angle of that. I firmly believe that unpaid work in the creative industries is it's one of the biggest issues in the creative industry. It completely stymies any real diversity and inclusion within the industries. People like to talk about that. They like to make very kind of performative statements, but fundamentally, if you want the creative industry to be genuinely diverse, then taking away a financial barrier for entry is one of the most effective manners of doing that. If you don't pay people to work with you, then no matter what way you slice it, you are fundamentally excluding all of the people who cannot afford to work for you for free. Simple as that. So if you're based this is London Design Festival, so if you're based in London, your ability to go and work for free is perhaps, or is almost certainly, a little bit higher than that if you're based outside of London. Furthermore, if you are living with parents or family, if you don't have any kind of financial necessity to bring in a wage, then yeah, working for free is something you can quite easily do, and and people do all the time. If you've got to earn money in order to pay your rent, how on earth are you meant to be able to work for free? So any opportunities within the creative industry that are unpaid, I think, are just contributing to the problem that we see throughout the industry, top to bottom, where for all of the talk about equality, it does not exist. And you see that anytime there's a piece of research goes out, the picture is made quite depressingly clear. And every single time that happens, there's grand old sweeping statements. There's the occasional big firm will hire a diversity officer. Very little changes beyond that. So I think for me, I don't see a way where we can aspire towards the kind of inclusive, exciting, creative environment that the creative industries love to kind of project and and define themselves by, if that barrier for entry still exists, and if it's common as well beyond that. If it exists in little pockets, that's a very different problem to it being a wide held attitude that it's okay to let people work for you unpaid. I think as well, as a employer, and I use that I use that term loosely, what are you teaching the person who you're allowing to, or you've got working for you for free, about the value of what they do? It's an incredibly, and I think education contributes to this as well, in the lack of support for teaching people the value, the market value of what they do, and how to figure that out and calculate it and use it throughout their career. But as industry, there's a huge responsibility there as well. If people, whether they go to university or not, if they're looking to enter the creative industries and they see that the cultural thing to do is to work unpaid for an indeterminate period of time, usually well over 3 to 6 months before you get a paid opportunity, you're going to put people off. And not because they don't want a career in the creative industries, and not because they're not perfectly skilled for that, but because it's a completely unrealistic career path. So I think you have to take personal responsibility if you are out there enabling these kind of trends to continue. That's on you. So, teaching people that this is the done thing. This is what you went through. That's one I hate the most. I had to work unpaid. It's a rites of passage. What a terrible thing to pass on down. And I would hope that those who really struggled with that, when they come through and they're in a position to hire people, to mentor people, to show people how to make it work in the creative industry, that they pay them, because they don't want people to suffer the same way that they suffered. Before I get any more worked up, let's move on to the legal side of this kind of take on this. There is no legal, and say what you will about the UK government on this, but there is no legal definition of an intern. Okay, and often these kind of unpaid positions are called internships. Now, what there is very clear guidance on the government website, gov.co.uk, which you'll be able to see in a second, about the different types of definitions that there are of workers and what comes with those definitions. So for me, when people describe their unpaid internships to me, straight away, my reaction 9 times out of 10 is, okay, so you're defined as a worker by what you're describing to me. So let's look at that definition now. And this changes, periodically, but broadly speaking, the kind of fundamentals remain the same. So, is there some kind of contract or agreement in place? Now, fundamentally, this does not have to be a written contract. This can be a verbal thing. In that sense, are there agreed hours of work? Is the role clearly defined? If so, you're already edging towards being, or you're likely to qualify as a worker. Is there a promise of a future job? Now, this is a really funny one, because this gets kind of thrown out a lot of the time, loosely. But current government guidance kind of equates this similarly to pay. If there's a promise of future pay, that kind of counts as well. So if you're in a position where somebody has gone, well, you'll work unpaid for 3 months, but if it goes well, again, you are quite quickly qualifying as a worker. Can you, as the worker or as the intern or whatever, it's being packaged up as, can you subcontract that work? If you can't do it that day, can you get a mate to stand in for you, or get a colleague to stand in for you? If not, chances are you're a worker. Do you report to a manager of some kind? Is there a person who sets your tasks, oversees them, you report back to? Yeah, exactly. Pretty much every internship on the planet is structured like that. Do you have to turn up? Is there an expectation for you to come to work? Yeah, then most likely you're a worker. Now, if you're a worker, you are entitled by law to national minimum wage. And if that's in London, the London living wage. So, legally speaking, there is a lot of shady practice here, a lot of misreporting, calling people volunteers. Volunteer work is something very different in terms of the legal definition. For a start, there cannot be any pay of any kind apart from expenses, and you often see this in internships. Oh, they don't pay, but they cover my rail card. In order to be a volunteer by the legal definition, and thus not qualify for minimum wage, you also have to be working for a volunteer agency, a charity of some sort, not a design studio. So please, believe me when I say that there's 2 different things going on here. There is the law and there is enforcement. And unfortunately, UK government has never had any interest in enforcing these things, and this is why people get away with it. But as an employer, should you have unpaid workers? Absolutely not. Do you want to break the law? That's up to you. But check out anytime the government website for a full breakdown of each legal definition. I think furthermore, just to kind of wrap up, from a individual's point of view, you've got to ask yourself, like, do I want to work unpaid, and what are the impacts on me? I think it sets a dangerous precedent. It digs a hole that's really hard to get out of, both in terms of your self-confidence, your personal agency. It's really hard then to go from that unpaid position to a paid position, because you'll often find employers like, well, if you worked for free there, why should we pay you? It's a dangerous and slippery slope to get on, and I've met and spoken to many people who get stuck in a cycle just going round and round. It's like a merry-go-round that you never know when to get off, or that doesn't seem, it's not like X amount of months equate to anything, and you always get battered with this word experience. You can get experience working for yourself. I would encourage you to work freelance 1,000,000 times over instead of work for somebody unpaid. And I guess finally, if you are an employer and you feel really aggrieved by what I've had to say in this video, why not try and structure these things a different way? If you're bringing someone into your professional environment, in some regard, you're expecting them to add value. Okay, so that might not be winning you work, but if it's helping you to complete paid work, or it's helping to flesh out concepts or pitches for paid work, they are bringing value to you. So if you can't afford to hire someone right now, don't hire someone right now. Pitch for a new project, build them into your budget, pay them that way. It's really not a lot to ask to schedule national minimum wage or London living wage into a project budget. You know that, I know that, and the only reason people are getting away with it is because young people who've just graduated don't know that. So please, I'd urge you, stop taking advantage of people. If you can't afford to take them on right now, don't take them on. If you run a creative business, you're more than capable of finding a way to factor that price into the next project you do. So that's me. My blood pressure is nice and high now. I hope that has resonated and answered some questions. Tune in, I guess, to the rest of New Agency and see how the conversation evolves. Thanks.